I'm gonna stream this anyway. And we can see that there are some nice balls that are evenly, they're not skewed, they're not leaning to one side or another. As we look around here, we can see that this is really tight. It looks a lot like the native board. You can just see the flux there. It's not really mashed down because we can still see these balls there. And then what I really like about this one is way out here at the end, it's still attached way at the end. A lot of times these boards will get warped and it's hard to get them to attach way out here as well as way back here by the sim tray. So this one looks really good, and we can see that also looks good there all the way down. So I'm happy with that. The next thing that I like to do before I put it together to test is to check back in diode mode to see whether or not we have communication between the bottom board and the top board. So let's check on that with the multimeter. So you guys remember this board from earlier today, that the problem was that it was open line at a couple of spots here on the digitizer connector. So the first step was to diagnose and troubleshoot, which we did in the first video. And then the next thing that we had to do was to actually recover the data. So after splitting the board, we had a path to data. I've been doing that all day. The guy is totally recovered, and now I've been making a video or trying to put it back together in a video that we could talk about. All right, so here we go. We're going to now go back and test. Let's see if we still have our side camera working. All right, so here's side camera, and we can put the multimeter here and turn that on. Let's kind of smush side camera over a little bit like that, and that way you guys can maybe still see this spot. All right, so we're going to do red probe on ground, and we had OL in the sort of top part of the connector here when we began this, and now 0.4 is normal. Yay! 0.4, and then on the other side where we had an open line, it's back to 0.4 as well. So that tells us that we have sealed the gap. So we have fixed the original problem, and we are good to go. So let's go ahead and test. So we're going to shut that down. So the diode mode test, if that came up open line, then we would know that we're either missing a ball under there, something's still up. We could take this, split it apart again, reball again, put it back on there again. So in order to do this reball, I'm not sure that I have captured video. I wanted to make an edited video, but if not, I did this reball using the G-Lon stencil. So this is the stencil that I used, the G-Lon stencil. And there's a lot of different products that are out there for working on the iPhone 10. The G-Lon stencil is a good one. So I really like Wyman in general, and I like what he does for putting information out there for free for everybody. So definitely support him and buy the G-Lon stencil. I use the eye socket, of course, for troubleshooting and testing. I love the eye socket. The eye socket is a really fantastic tool. Of course, I had to have two different known good boards, so I keep those around, plus known good battery, screen, dock connector. All of those things can make a phone not boot that would otherwise boot. Now, here's the key for doing this one. I needed to have the specialized iPhone 10 nozzle, which you can get from iPad Rehab Supply, and I needed to have a different solder paste than the typical one that we use for chips. So we typically use the 6337 leaded. In order to do the iPhone 10 split board reball, you need to use a low melt paste. This is 150 degrees Celsius low melt alloy. So get some of that stuff if you want to be putting these things back together. All right. Thank you for confirming my software corruption on my success. Yes, that was a real drag. You had somebody messing around on a couple of different areas that didn't really make sense there. So that was kind of a drag. Okay, so so now we can test. So let's go ahead and pull back our side camera. I have been working on this for way too long. This is here for data recovery. So our policy for data recovery is we'll fix it enough to get data, and we don't make a guarantee that the phone is going to be usable or go back out working. So I did this video just for you guys. And if you guys like getting to see some extra stuff, then what you can do for us is recommend people for mail-in repair. So I love how many people out there are fixing their own stuff. I am absolutely thrilled with how much mail-in repair volume has gone down as we get more and more letters of people that are, hey, I fixed this myself. I did my own touch disease. I did my audio IC. Thanks for your videos. And that's fantastic. Plus all of our students, that end up fixing their stuff is also fantastic. But as a result, the fodder that we use to make these videos, that we use to learn and and experiment and grow, that stuff ends up going way down. Our mail-in repair volume is maybe 10% of what it used to be before we started making videos. So we need for you guys, if you're out there on forums and you see people recommending folks to do their mail-in board repair, think about iPad Rehab, because we still need to get those referrals. Our town local is super tiny. This is a one-stoplight town with a couple thousand people in it. Maybe it's not a city. So we really appreciate those referrals. Or buy stuff from iPad Rehab Supply, or sign up for training yourself. We love to teach. Now let's see what happens if we boot this thing up and see if I can get the hell out of here. Thanks, DEFCON ID 4. All right, let's see. Let's assume that it's not going to boot unless we put a battery on there. Man, my iPhone 10 battery is getting long in the tooth. Alrighty, so I'm hoping to be able to make an edited video that shows you guys how to do the reball, because it's really finicky. And my message with it for everyone is that we're all going to have to learn how to put these suckers back together ultimately. This is a $1,000 phone, and the iPhone 10 Plus, now the 10S Max, the 10R, these things are going to be what we're all going to be fixing. And they're going to fail in the same ways, which is bending at that connection point. So swapping boards, marrying them together, that's going to be something we have to do. Yay, it looks like it's going to boot, which is good, because sometimes it will boot loop. It'll troll you. There we go. So this is booted up again, and we have touch. So touch is working. You can click out of that. So we have touch solved. This board is sandwiched back together. And I want to hopefully post a video where we show you how we walk through that. And it is one of those things that, if you look around, there's some iPhone 10 videos out there, but I don't think there's any video of anybody putting one back together. And that's because it's tough. It took a long time to figure out a technique that would work. But don't let that stop you. You've got to learn it. You've got to figure it out. And you will. You will be able to figure it out. And the key, for me, at least, was these things. Number one, you've got to use low melt. So don't try to do it with leaded. So ditch the leaded, get the low melt. That's clue number one for getting these iPhone 10s back together. Number two is the stencil is going to be bendy. It's going to be bendier, and it's going to work differently than the stencils that you're used to. So there's just a whole lot of metal here, and it's a large area. So that is going to be a different technique. In my reball, when I first started out, I would drop balls in the corner. So I would drop pre-made solder balls, 0.3 millimeter pre-made leaded solder balls. I would drop that in some of the corners to try to help anchor the stencil so that it wouldn't really peel up. After that, then I would put the low melt paste on, and then I would reball it, flow it in stages as I kind of went all the way around. That would let me put my tweezers and kind of trace around there. Thanks, Greg. Love what you do. Thank you, Greg. I appreciate that. So after doing that, I think you can get a successful reball if you kind of keep that in mind. You anticipate that it's going to bend. Another tip is to apply your heat kind of around the stencil to try to warm up the metal rather than blast it at one area right out of the gate. So if you kind of bring it up to temperature, then that might cut down on some of the bending and warping. But just be okay. It's going to bend and warp, so do it in little sections, and you can kind of get away from that. Next, you should also just pay attention to your actual spots. Not everything is important. So if we click over and we look at ZXW, for example, if we look at ZXW and see what's going on here, all of this outer row around the entire iPhone X board, the outer row is all ground. So ground is just there to kind of anchor it. It's not actually data conducting. There's no ones and zeros or voltage going through here. But these inner row ones are important. So that's a difference. So don't kill yourself. Don't beat yourself up if you get, a couple of balls over here bridged together or blobbed or whatever. That's not that important. You just need to kind of really pay attention to the balls that are important. Separately, I'm going to do one of my favorite pad repair. I have a special technique that I use on the iPhone Xs to fix all of those torn pads that they get from ripping apart in the center. This one didn't happen to need that, so I didn't have to work on that today. Then next, I would say that I need to go home. Yeah, I definitely need to go home. Next, be sure to get home on time so that you don't get in trouble and that you can actually make dinner for your kids. So I can't think of any other iPhone X tips off the top of my head other than stick with it. It's a great way to learn your hot air. This nozzle is really, really helpful as well if you have a quick, in order to bring that entire top board up to temperature so that it can shift and slide, which is what it's going to need to do. You got to get the whole thing hot at once in order for it to get into its right spot. So that is it. I am completely and utterly out of time. Hopefully I'll be able to come back and make that edited reball video, but if not, I just wanted to let you guys know that yes, this phone is working. Oh, let's get rid of the XW. We did fix it. So it is possible to get those boards back together, and we'll make a video on that if we can. Plus, may or may not have audio. And that is that's it for this one.